Stay on.
Welcome back to another episode of The Cut. I'm your host, Christian Williams, and I am here, as always, with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing good. It's been a while. A little bit busy
Yeah.
schedules for the both of us the last couple of weeks, and it's only going to get worse, but here we are.
Yes. So we apologize for the hiatus. We didn't mean to have this long of a hiatus, but I went to a work conference, and then we had a big rookie guide drop on Football Guys, which is totally free, so you guys should go check that out too. But we were working on that, and then Randy's been super busy with his sports. But we are back. We're gonna have another episode early next week, and then we're hopefully gonna have Friday fixes. And you'll notice this is an episode of the Friday Fix. It's clearly Saturday, so it's really like not the Friday Fix, but it is. We are going to be talking about the Chicago Bears today. We figured we'd start with the easy one, the one that everyone's talking about. What are they going to do with the first overall pick? How are they going to spend all of their money? And in these episodes, we do talk through, the state of the team, current cap situation, key free agents, go through a 5-round mock to start. We'll get to the 7-rounders here in the next couple of weeks, a few weeks, I guess I should say. And then we kind of go through what the new roster would look like and how we fixed the team essentially. So, Randy,
just quick update. We usually switch to 7 once free agency is done because we'll just do a free agency review real quick and then switch over just for timeline. Plus, it helps us get to 7 rounds of people.
Exactly. Even some of these guys that were available, and because I did a lot of 7-round mocks just to see how I would attack it. I'm not quite there yet. I haven't quite gotten to all the 7th round prospects just yet, but hopefully in the next few weeks. Okay. Do you have anything to add before we dive in?
No, let's get into it.
All right. So state of the team. So the Chicago Bears had a pretty rough year, but obviously they're picking first overall, but on the surface, like they were competitive a lot of the year, despite having a pretty rough depth chart. Their overall Pro Football Focus grade was 31st, 62.8. Their best grade was their run offense. Their worst grade was their run defense. They were 14th with their run offense grade, and then they were 31st with their run defense grade. That is key because that is kind of going to drive some of these conversations about what they may do at the top of this draft, how they might attack free agency. We'd go through the current depth chart, but it's rough. There aren't too many players that you build around. I think we are both of the mindset that Justin Fields is one of those players, and this trade Justin Fields and take a quarterback talk is insane to me, especially Justin Fields did finish 9th in MVP voting, by the way. He got a 5th place vote, and that pushed him to 9th. Pretty sick. But do you disagree with that, Randy? Do you think that they should trade Justin Fields for a slew of picks?
That is just so rude to try and slander me like that. And that's the thing. Like, I don't think you're able to trade Justin Fields for this ridiculous haul. You might get a first back. I mean, I would assume you would, but it's tough. We're going to see the market for Rodgers here if he comes back from his trip and wants to play football, and Derek Carr here really soon. So we can get a better judge of that, but you're just not going to get some ridiculous value for it. People are going to want to have more of a reset quarterback market if they're going to trade all that. So it doesn't work. I think he is, obviously he's the top 10 fantasy quarterback for real life football. He played really well. I thought, he did a lot with nothing. It's hard to really judge a lot of his field vision and decision making when, your best receiver a lot of the weeks was Equanimeous St. Brown or Dante Pettis. These are all last ditch efforts of the league. So I think you do have a young core of receivers and Mooney, Claypool, and Velus Jones that you might be able to use. I think we both really like Mooney. I think we know there's a role for Claypool. We'll just see if he actually gets used in this role.
Yeah.
And they obviously got to add in their other cornerstones. I mean, Cole Kmet. I think people are on the train of Tevin Jenkins as a guard as a cornerstone piece.
Yep.
Kyler Gordon, Jalen Johnson, and Jaquan Briskers. So 3 secondary players. That's the only people I could list that could be cornerstone pieces of this team. So they're a little bit better off than like the Texans, but not by a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 2 Pro Football Focus grades that they ranked 31st in, the Texans were the worst team. The Texans were the worst team in football last year. It
Yeah.
just so happens that they ruined their chance at the first overall pick with that last week. For those
Lovie Smith and Davis Mills said we're going out swinging and fuck everyone else.
Yeah, and it was pretty awesome. So I think Tevin Jenkins is for sure a cornerstone piece to build around. I'm still iffy on Kmet. I think Kmet can be good. I think we know that he's a good red zone threat. I just don't know if he's like a difference maker that you pay top dollar for at the tight end position. But on the other side of things, though, is like they have to spend money, which we will get to here in a second. So maybe you just extend him for like 3 years instead of like a 4 or 5 year deal. And then maybe he is a cornerstone piece that you build around and you get him at a discount for those 3 years. And then you extend him again. He's a young player. But I just don't know. Is he a difference maker at the position? I don't know the answer to that.
Difference maker, probably not. I think he is, at least like average in the league, as the starters. Near the bottom of the top end. So awkward way to say it is he's a top 15 tight end, most likely. I think he's a cornerstone of this roster.
Sure.
I don't know if he's a cornerstone of the franchise at the position, but I think a possible small extension, which I'm not even sure is possible because you have to be in your 4th year.
Yeah, I think it's during this year he can extend. So once the new league year starts, I think technically
that's a decent shout to give him just like a small, heavy, front-loaded cash-wise contract up early to spend some of this cash. And then if, when the rest of the roster is full out built in 2 or 3 years, hopefully you can say, well, it was a nice try. We're going to get blank this year instead. And figure it out.
Yeah. The other name I wanted to mention, Jack Sanborn, is looking like he could be that. On the other side of things, their run defense was really bad. Most of that was not Sanborn's fault, and a lot of his production came on mop-up tackles. So I'm interested to see what he looks like with a decent front in front of him, and to really determine if he is one of those pieces to build around. But overall, depth chart sucks. Not a whole lot to be excited about. I do think if Mooney and Claypool are healthy down the stretch, I think the Bears probably aren't even picking second overall. I think they're probably 3rd or 4th, because I do think that Mooney definitely has that separating ability that Fields likes, and they showed some good connections early in the year. Let's get to the cap situation, because it's very good. Ryan Poles did a really good job in setting this team up for success this offseason, as long as they, actually attack it the right way. Randy, hit us with their top 51 number, and then what needs to happen this year.
So they're just over 98.5 million, 98.6 million in cap space. They do have good cap space for the next 3 years as well. So they're set up for the future, even with spending a lot this year if they need to, which they do. They can still have a lot of flexibility going forward, and they can work out contracts so, they're paying the piper now and then being able to reevaluate in a couple of years. But they have been really stingy spending, and that's what's led to this kind of cap space. And because of that, you basically, from 2020, there was a new kind of cap rule for 3 years. You had to spend so much in that period in cash. So not necessarily the cap, but signing bonuses, roster bonuses, all that kind of extra stuff. And they have to spend about $142 to $147 million this year in cash. So look for extensions for Mooney, for Claypool, for Jalen Johnson, for Komet, all these guys that could be cornerstone pieces. They're going to lock them up and give them huge paydays right now to front load these deals and keep cap flexibility for the future. But they have to meet a minimum requirement this year. I know. I want to say you have to spend like 90% of your cap as well, like in the 3-year period. So they're clearly far behind that number, and they will continue to roll cap. I do think they're going to have a decent amount to roll next year, even with a lot of these moves, but they need to really focus up, and they're going to spend this money. I mean, there's no league, there's no GM in this league, there's no front office in this league that would screw up and not spend what they have to require. But it's going to be kind of exciting to see all the moves that they do.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think Ryan Poles' mentality was, we have identified the pieces that Ryan Pace put in place that are worth keeping around, and we have also identified what our biggest needs are, and that would be the two trenches and on offensive and defensive line. And the good thing is that both of those free agent classes, and I would argue that the draft classes, are pretty strong in that nature. And so I think what Poles did is he said, you know what, we're going to attack this twofold. We're going to attack it in free agency. We're also going to attack it in the draft, despite what we do in free agency. So I think that that's going to be a major key this offseason. They do have a lot of free agents as well. So David Montgomery is the one that I think people are going to talk about a lot. There's been some, he wants to come back. There have been some reports that they don't necessarily view him as a guy that they should spend money on at the running back position, because from a fit perspective, he's not really the best running back for the system. On the other side of things, he was pretty productive despite that, and his running style definitely offered a different dynamic than Khalil Herbert's did. Do you think that there's a shot that they extend Montgomery for a while?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a really good chance that they at least bring him back for this year. Like I said, they have to spend this money. You might as well bring him back because he's pretty much I mean, besides Fields, he was your most productive weapon. Even if it isn't the perfect scheme fit, he's your best pass catching running back. He's your best bruising running back, so goal line running back. He is a 3-down workhorse that you can really rely on. Where Herbert really hasn't shown that. He just shown that he can rip off some big runs here and there. So I think it is good 1-2 punch there. And I think bringing back Montgomery is a smart financial play for them, because the only other option here is to either spend big at someone else, in my opinion, like Saquon or Josh Jacobs, and then you're sinking so much money into the running back position that hasn't really proved the best thing in the past, or you draft someone highly and then like Bijan's going to be gone by your second pick. Is Gibbs the best fit for the system?
No.
Like then you're waiting until third round most likely, and it starts to get muddy in the water. So I'd rather bring back Montgomery this year and just flesh it out for the future and not have to worry for the next year or two about the running back position when it comes to draft or free agency.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that mindset. We'll talk about it. I took a little bit of a different approach, and I'll explain that as we get to it. Some other free agents, Nicholas Morrow, Riley Reif. You listed Riley Reif as a starter. That's technically true. He was in and out of the lineup. The Bears rotated their offensive line at an incredible rate this year, and I think it was mostly an evaluation thing. But also they just did not get good play out of anyone on the offensive line, so I think they were trying different combinations. Some other guys, Byron Pringle, Angelo Blackson, N'Keal Harry, Ryan Griffin, DeAndre Houston-Carson, Patrick Scales, Matthew Adams, Dane Cruikshank, Dakota Dozier, Michael Schofield, Mike Pennell, Dante Pettis, Joe Thomas, not the Hall of Famer, Nathan Peterman, Kari Blasingame, Trayvon Wesco, and Armand Watts. So They also have restricted free agents. Lustifer, and then Josh Blackwell has generated a little bit of hype as a guy that they might want to bring back. Um, it, so we'll talk about who we think they'll bring back, but based on what we've already said, there aren't too many pieces that I think they're going to be ecstatic to bring back. I think that we're going to be looking at a very different Bears team next year.
Yeah, I think there was a few people that flashed, and we're both going to cover them and most likely bring most of them back, or flashed at least a little bit, or best of the situation at that kind of position. So I think they're definitely coming back. And this is, and with a team with this much cap room, like there's key cut candidates for them. That is so weird to say, because they could increase their cap room even more if they so choose to. It seems to be a little bit of a fool's gold thing to do that, just because of how much money you have to spend anyways. But Justin Jones and what is Muhammad is the defensive end. I'm trying to fully remember his actual name.
Al Shazir, I think, something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to say the wrong one. That's why it's like yeah. It looks like we both cut him. So I think that's the way we're gonna say this.
Yeah.
No one. I mean, Justin Jones, I think, had a relatively good year. Patrick at center was hit or miss. I think you could bring him back and be happy because they like their guards, but
yeah.
And honestly, there's not a ton of centers in this league. So just having one, even if you drafted someone to replace him or a guard or whatever, or signed someone else, having him as a high paid backup isn't the worst case either. But Muhammad is a little bit more of a move piece, especially because it does look like they are attacking the edge position, at least in the draft, if not in both that and free agency.
Yeah. Lucas Patrick, to me, I understand if they go a different direction and go get. So I'll talk about exactly what my strategy was. I chose to cut him as well. He was not good. Also, them liking their guards shouldn't matter a whole lot because Cody Whitehair was atrocious, and I think they definitely need an upgrade at left guard. On the other side of things, like in the run game, he was good, and so that if that is your strength and that is what you want to build on, then I think that maybe they keep him around. Maybe he is a trade candidate if they do decide to upgrade. But also, at this point, just keep these guys as high value backups that you've seen play. You know that they're not that great, but probably better than a lot of backups that you'd end up with if you chose to go a different direction. So,
yeah, and I think the key part of like listing what they actually like from this team is more not saying that they won't go out and get replacements or draft replacements or future replacements, but it's just saying it lessens the priority of the team. So that's the key aspect of that. But I do agree, Whitehair in the passing game is not great.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's tackle free agency. Randy, this is going to be a long segment. There are a lot of names that we added because obviously they have to spend, so they are going to add a lot of names. Randy, you go first.
Yeah, so I can just start out by saying I spent $63 million. So we'll just start off with that. But bringing back people, Nicholas Moreau, I brought him back 2 years, $7.5 million. I think that could go up to 8 or 9 as well, just to spend more money. For what it's worth, Moreau has had an up and down career for sure, but he played really, really well at the tail end of his career with the Raiders. And he played really, really well this year for the Bears. He really stepped up. Honestly, this linebacking core played much better than people expected, especially with Roquan Smith leaving and, making a huge void for these guys to step up. Speaking of, I brought back Joe Thomas as well. Again, not the Hall of Famer, but a veteran linebacker on a $1 million contract. This gives you a base of the 3 linebackers that you really like. And Joe Thomas, oh my God, why am I blanking on the dude's name? We just talked Jack Sanborn and Nicholas Moreau, and then that way you can kind of fill out the rest of that position if you can in free agency. It's not the strongest class for that. And the best ones are older, so they're probably not going to come to a rebuilding team. That's kind of the issue there. But then this class is a little top heavy at the linebacker, so if you don't end up getting one you like, you're not losing out if you bring back both of them. I also brought back Armand Watts at D tackle, year $1.6 million, and Kareem Blasingame. Okay. 1 year, $900K. I don't know why I butchered that. And finally, David Montgomery, 2 years, $14 million, really front loaded. So the tag is about $10.5 million for running backs, if memory serves. So getting him for about $7 million a year, or front loaded it this year, and it's cheaper next year, which makes him a cut candidate next year if it's not working out and you just want to retool the whole running back game. I think that works. Again, I think it's the biggest deal to just not have to worry about the running back position this year, just because you have two that you like.
Yeah, I like it.
Free agents actually bring it in. Caleb McGarry, 4 years, $71 million to play your right tackle, because Alex Leatherwood is barely an offensive lineman. Yannick Ngakoue, 3 years, $44 million to be a starting edge for you. Played decent for the Raiders last year, has played pretty well for the Colts this last year. So I do think it's a good step up for them. Dalvin Tomlinson, 2 years, $17 million to anchor your rebuilding of the D tackle room. This is also, I think both of these signings are a bit of like a safety blanket for you in case you do trade back further, or you miss out on Carter, or Anderson, thank you. Yep. If you miss out on one of those two, and you really, this way, if you get one, then you're set up in that position for the next few years. If not, then you still have a good starter there no matter what. I also brought in Greedy Williams for a year, $5 million. I don't think the Browns are going to be able to pay him because they have to bring back more people. They aren't in the best cap situation. I do think they restructured a few people. But the third corner on the team that really hasn't been healthy, and he did play really well at times this last year, but they have Emerson and multiple other corners that have stepped up that I think it's time for Greedy Williams to be out of this team. But I do think he still could be a starting edge corner for you, or slot if you really need it. But this way, it's a kind of a prove-it deal for him. Jordan Akins, 1 year, $2.5 million. Go from the worst team to the second worst team, but the Bears need a backup tight end, or at least someone to compete. He's a bit more athletic, in my opinion, than Cole Kmet as well, so he could be a move piece for this team. And then Paris Campbell, 1 year, $2.5 million. Add the speedster to this receiving core. He's never been healthy, so this is his most healthy year this last year, ironically. And he did have some good games, but this way he is, at worst, the top 3 option going into the draft for a team. And it gets him into a new situation with a quarterback that could really use a guy that can break away really quick. And if you could have him and Claypool on the other side, both being heavy, short usage, just breakaway candidates, and then you have a real breakaway candidate on the outside of Mooney, I think you could pretty much get any receiver you like in the draft at that point and just hope to develop them.
Yeah, I do. The only thing I'd push back on I think Campbell's going to get some money, man. I really think that, they have it, so it really doesn't matter. Like, even if you gave him I also signed him, but I gave him like $7 million a year, just because I think we did see finally the health this year and the production. He had 600 yards this year.
He did.
And so I think just with the free agent landscape too, in terms of what these receivers are, I think it's going to be like not a Christian Kirk deal, because that deal was pretty nuts at the time, but it proved to be right. But I think it's going to definitely get him a little bit more money, and the Bears definitely have the money to spend on it. So
it's true. The only issue for me is I think Juju is probably the best receiver of this free agent class, and I don't think he gets that much to stay with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So I think you can't pay Paris more because he's barely played. So I think
he's getting 7 though.
I don't think he's getting 7 or anywhere close, 10? In my opinion.
Didn't he get 10 last year?
Oh,
Juju?
Oh, Juju?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Paris. I was like, no, he's not getting 7. No. Juju, I think, had 10, but it was a heavy incentive laden contract. I think it'll
Okay.
be the same thing to return just because there's just nothing out
Yeah.
there really.
Jacoby.
Um,
Jacoby's the other like
Jacoby's,
wild card.
yeah, so he might get the most money, and that could be to the Texans, that could be to the Bears, but
Could
to
be.
me, it's just not the best fit for the Bears, only because of what they've built the receiver room already. I'd rather take a lower tier and go Paris, but I do think Paris could get up to $5 million a year. It's just
Yeah. Yeah, the other piece of it is like I'm overspending on these guys because I
yes,
think you'll have to overspend a bit to get people to go there just with the state of the roster. But I do think that a receiver might be fine not doing that to play with Justin Fields because the league loves Justin Fields, whether the media does or not. Like everyone talks about how fun it is to play with him. So, or how good of a quarterback he is too. So no, I really like that. The Greedy Williams thing too, that bumps Kyler Gordon into nickel full time, which I think is where he's going to settle in.
yeah.
And I think that that's a good move for sure. Okay, I'm going to go through mine. I didn't really bring too many pieces back. And so I'll start. I brought back Joe Thomas, 2 years, 4 million, so a little bit more. Again, just overspending because they need to. But short-term deals, I think that if they do overspend on these guys, it'll be within 2 to 3 years. They know there's an opportunity that they may have to extend Justin Fields and not get into this Lamar Dak situation that we've seen. And so they've got to save some money for that. We talked about all the other extensions. So then I brought back Kari Blasingame as well, 2 years, 2 million. Just bring back your fullback. I think that he played well, relatively well. And I do think that a fullback is necessary with this run first offense that I think they're going to continue to use. Those are the only two I brought back. And then I went Mike McGlinchey is my right tackle signing. I do think that they will sign a tackle, a big name tackle immediately. And I think that they will spend a ton of money to get him. I said 4 years, 65 million. Think that makes sense. I think that he is a perfect fit for their scheme too. And so you're really shoring up that right side. I think Braxton Jones is probably the starting left tackle going into next year. I think he showed enough. So I think they do attack that right side and put someone next to Tevin Jenkins that can really make sure that at least Justin Fields' front side is protected pretty well. Then I went to James Bradbury, 2 years, 27 million. That is a huge overpay, but James Bradbury is still playing well. We're seeing it still. I do think that he may not return to the Eagles because they're in okay cap situation, but it's not exactly. He wouldn't get this kind of money from the Eagles, so he's a good fit
No,
for them.
and depending on the outcome of tomorrow, this could be more likely if the Eagles do win. He already has the ring. He can kind of go get his money now, and that's what this contract would be.
Yeah, for sure. And I went a little rogue and I paid a linebacker, which so they actively traded Roquan Smith because they didn't want to pay him, but Roquan Smith also wanted 15 to 20, well, more than $15 million a year. He wanted $20 million a year. I gave a 5-year, $70 million contract to David Long, who I think is really good. I think he played extraordinarily well in the Titans defense this year. He was kind of the engine that made it go. So essentially you've flipped Roquan into David Long, saved a little bit of money, and also got a guy that I think fits their scheme really well. So went that direction. Zach Allen, defensive lineman from the Cardinals, kind of a versatile piece, but a bigger guy that I think that the Bears will like. 3 years, 40 million. Attack the trenches. That's pretty much my mindset here. Charles Omenihu, 1 year, 12 million. Another guy that he played well, got hurt, kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit with the 49ers this year, but a guy that I think showed enough to warrant getting a $10+ million deal, even if it's short term, to more of a proven deal. Paris Campbell, 3 years, 21 million. Go lock him up for a few years. I think, if you trust your medical staff to keep him healthy, I think that you're comfortable with him as a top 3 option in your wide receiver room, which I think that's what he would be for the Bears immediately.
And I will say this contract would be like a cap of 21. Like
Sure. Yeah.
this would be a heavy incentive, basically all playing time too, because that's what teams are going to be offering Paris Campbell.
Yeah, for sure. But he does bring that, like you already talked about it, but the short stuff can turn a screen into a home run touchdown. I think that is the type of receiver that the Bears are going to covet, because I think they thought they were getting that in Velus Jones, and he's got a lot of work to do. He's got a lot.
Is Velus Jones older than Paris Campbell? That can't be right?
He's probably close. I mean, they're probably similar aged.
That can't be right, but it seems right.
You should look that up as I go through the rest of this. Okay. Next, Dalton Reisner, 4 years, $35 million. Guy that played well early, played okay over the last couple of years, but not a guy that I think that will be retained by the Vikings. So 4 years, $35 million, pretty decent amount, but that shores up your left guard spot. I do think they attack two starting offensive line positions with free agency. I don't think that prevents them from going and drafting guys. But I do think that they're confident that they can maybe develop Ja'Tyre Carter into a viable backup. And I also think they're going to take shots late in this draft, because that's what Ryan Poles likes to do. But Dalton Reisner slots in as your starting left guard immediately. Then I went to Allen Lazard, 2 years, $21 million, super short-term deal, but Allen Lazard does not seem to want to go back to Green Bay. Did you find the answer?
Paris Campbell is 2 months older. Yeah, oh insane. My God, it's May and July. That's like May 11th, July 16th.
So context for that, for folks that don't know much about Velus Jones, he was a rookie last year, and a bad one at that. You really step up and be productive. And Paris Campbell is through his entire rookie contract. So that's pretty remarkable. But then, like I said, I added Allen Lazard as well. I do think that they're just going to take some shots. And, I don't think that there's anyone outside of Mooney and Claypool that they like in that wide receiver room. I think Velus Jones will be kept as like a special teams guy. I also wouldn't be shocked if they add a third or fourth receiver from free agency. Is just like, let's take a shot on these guys. Next, Rashad Penny. That is the direction I went with the running back position. I think Penny, when healthy, is one of the best runners in the NFL, just from a pure running standpoint. That said, he's not healthy really ever. Even we saw a glimpse of what he could be early this year, and then he got hurt again. I think a change of scenery will help, and I think that a 1-year deal is what he's going to get. He fits the Bears scheme to perfection. That is the type of runner that I think they're looking for. So I think that is a sneaky. I'm pretty confident that they'll covet him in free agency. But
he also gives you a bit of Monty, of that power back, the goal line, but he still has the one cut that you get from Herbert that they really covet in this scheme.
Yes, for sure. So then I didn't bring David Montgomery back. I initially did. I brought them both back, but then they also have Khalil Herbert. I don't think that they want 3 backs. They drafted Tristan Ebner last. Good. So I just went with Rashad Penny, and then we'll tackle the draft later. There's another guy that I like. Ethan Pocic, 2 years, $13 million as your backup center, backup because of the draft that we'll talk about soon. And that's it. I ended up spending, I think on average, this might be a little inflated. I did quick math while Randy was talking, about $100 million, about $99 million is what this comes out to on average per year. On the other side of things, like I'd probably front load these and bump that number up even a little bit more so that you have more flexibility next year. So,
yep.
Yeah. All right. So we talked through team needs quite a bit. Obviously, the offensive line, the defensive line, and wide receiver are the main positions. But I will argue that cornerback is pretty high up as well. More linebackers, which we tackled in free agency, and then running back does slot in there. But once again, Ryan Poles is going to tag trench. So, Randy, how did you approach the draft? Did you take Bryce Young first overall?
I did not. So we both traded back. and we both selected one of the teams we were going to trade back with to try and diversify this. I did take the farther trade back, giving Christian the more likely scenario. I
Yeah.
did the trade back with the Panthers. I do think that the Raiders would give up a lot less. Well, not a lot less, but they give up less to move up. But there's a lot of linkage there to Aaron Rodgers if he's coming back. I think there's going to be a great deal of Jimmy G talk if that falls through. I don't feel strongly of them trading up for the one with all the rest of the team needs that they have. The Panthers, I mean, they're trying to make this work and trying to get this right under Frank Reich and just get it nailed right now. So for me, I trade back there. I traded the 101, and this is honestly a little bit less than I've seen a lot of places, but this is a lot because they do have to top what Christian is getting from, spoiler alert, the Colts uh, to move up that far in the draft. So I traded 101 for 109, 239, 261, 24 first, and 25 first. I do think there's a possibility of getting like a fourth or fifth back in one of those years as well. But this is what I was getting back the most in the trade simulators for all these mock drafts. So this is what I went with. And with the 109, I took Miles Murphy. For some reason, didn't put college and everything, but Edge from Clemson. I just realized that I forgot to do that. But he is just a really talented upside guy, really scheme versatile, which is good because this team doesn't really fully know the fleshed out of what they're going to do on defense right now. Obviously, they have the ideal identity, but it hasn't been fleshed out because they don't have the talent yet. Size, length, explosion, pretty good fluidity. I do think he can play with power or speed, so he's more versatile than people, give him credit for. This is I feel like some teams are gonna like him, some teams are gonna like Smith, right? Who's the A&M?
Oh, Randy,
Right?
you're asking. Yeah,
His
you're
name
asking me
doesn't.
questions.
Yeah,
Give me a second.
you're
Are you
fine.
talking Tyree Wilson?
Well, yes.
The one from it's Texas Tech, not A&M.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think there's obviously Will Anderson's going first of the edges, and then there's another tier of those two, and then there's another drop down of like 3 tiers of edge of like an edge, and then another drop. So I think getting an edge here to be your stud is a smart play. He does need to grow as a finisher. Definitely, the deep edge has been a struggle for him, and counters to pick up the rush is definitely a struggle for him at times. But a lot of times he didn't need to because of the rest of the Clemson defense. So it wasn't a top need for him. So that's where I went with my first. Do you want to go with your first? Do you want me to just go right through?
Let's go alternating. Let's see how that works. Quickly on the Murphy pick, I like it. It's definitely a traits-based pick, which I feel is something they're gonna do, simply because they don't have guys with traits, and that's a lot of the problem right now. Is they just don't have guys that could be potential stars. Miles Murphy is that. The production hasn't really been there though. I think he had 7 sacks last year, maybe 7 sacks this year too. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
No, you finish your
no,
thought. But
I was just gonna say, he's not a guy that's like the numbers are gonna jump off the page for you, but
yeah.
once again, that's because of that Clemson defensive line, and just how loaded it was. Like he would pressure, and then someone would mop up the sack, and so even some of those numbers, like his pressure rates, are still good.
Yeah.
So
And that was my point is that's going to be a recurring issue with Brian Bresee, Simpson at linebacker. Like it's a recurring thing where we're like, okay, all of them could have had these better stats, but because they were all there, no one did.
right.
And it's the same problem we usually have with Georgia, Bama. It's just there's so much talent. Ohio State a couple of years ago did, but it's just how it is. There's just so much there that no one's completely standing out in terms of stats.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'll give my first pick. So like Randy said, I traded with the Colts. Some of these hauls that I've seen, Bears fans are going to be a little disappointed, I think, with what actually comes through. If they trade all the way back to 9. Like the haul that Randy got, that's ideal. On the other side of things, I do think that they want to make sure they pick up an early second, which you did as well. But that was a key component to the trade with the Colts too. So I went with 101 and the 134th pick at the back of the 4th round. So I packaged those two for 104, 235, a 2024 first, and a 2024 second. I didn't get a third first round pick. You're going back 3 picks for this. I will say if it's the Colts, I think that the price does go up a bit because they are getting in front of their division rivals and the Texans. I do think that maybe that makes it so you can snag a third or something here. That said, this trade is more realistic than some of the ones that I've seen. So, and then I traded back. I ended up with Jalen Carter. So, sorry, go ahead.
Quickly, they're not trading Michael Pittman, DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Taylor, the 4th pick, the 2nd pick, next year's first, and the first after. Just stop. And the Bears aren't also trading back 6 times. Just not. Correct. It's not realistic and not happening.
There's a world in which I do see a double trade back though.
It's not impossible, but the odds are really not great. The most likely scenario there is if they barely trade back to 2 and don't take a lot, and then trade back again.
Which I toyed with that idea, getting the Texans to the 101 and then the Colts coming up to 102 to make sure no one jumped them once again. Because at this point, I think the Cardinals would be willing to trade back as well.
Yeah, they are. They know this next year, unless they bring in like a Jameis Winston or someone, is almost going to be a tank with Kyler's injury and contract taking up too much money.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I didn't do that. I do think there's a world in which DeForest Buckner gets traded, but you're not getting that 2nd pick, and you might not even get a 2nd first. Because of that, I think the Bears will choose to go get a different defensive tackle in Jalen Carter, which is who I selected here. I think the odds that he's here after a trade back, as long as they stay in that top 4, are pretty high. There's also a world in which the Cardinals go Jalen Carter and they end up with Will Anderson. That did not happen in most of my iterations, though. Jalen Carter is an awesome, awesome fit for their defense, too. They need a guy like Jalen Carter. So
I think either way is a win-win, and especially with the money that you spend in free agency, this is the biggest win because you spent a little bit more on a couple edges. So this definitely worked out best for you there. My first 2nd round pick, so we both got one there. 39, I got Zay Flowers, wide receiver from Boston College. I didn't sign as many receivers as Christian, so that's definitely a big need here. Very electric in space, so it's kind of an addition to Paris Campbell and more extension of it. I do think he's a 3-level receiver. He's dynamic with the ball, especially after the catch, but he does lack size. His hands are inconsistent, and because of his size, he's not a great blocker. So there's a bit of concerns there, but I think he could easily work in as the wide receiver 3 in this offense, learn from Paris Campbell, grow. I did not sign Paris to a multi-year deal, so I think this is a perfect 1-of-1. Let's build this position. And if Felix Jones works out that same way, good. But either way, we have our big body in Claypool. We have our full deep threat in Mooney. I think it's a good fleshing out of the receiver room.
Yeah, Flowers is pretty similar to Mooney in how he plays too, but he has more athleticism, more speed. I think he will be a guy pretty high up on their draft board. They need to get that high 2nd round pick to even have a shot at him because he will go in the top 40 for sure.
Yes.
I think. I've been mocking him in the 1st round recently, and
there's chances. It's just that back end of the 1st, there's so many like different needs, and receiver isn't like top of my list for most of them.
For sure, yeah. And this is a draft we've kind of seen it in a lot of mocks where receivers might fall a little further than we're used to over the last few years. So it's not a great wide receiver class. I keep saying that. People keep telling me I'm stupid, but it's just not. It's not even close to last year or the year before.
There's no CD Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Jefferson. These guys have freakishly grown. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, all these guys they have, but going into the draft, we knew it was CD or Judy, top 10 most likely. One of them's going. Going into the draft, we knew or,
Jamar
who else
Chase.
was with Jefferson? Oh, Chase. No, Chase was the year after.
Yeah, with Jefferson, that was the CD year. No, it wasn't.
No, it went like right before him too. It doesn't matter, but either way,
Jalen
we knew
Reagor.
who the top ones were. Not Rager, but we knew who the top ones were, so we knew they were going to be off the board. And that's just not the case for this. So we know who the top 3 are in this receiving class, but it's looking more and more likely that it'll be like late teens to 30, where they're going to fly off the board with the chance of one of them falling to the top end of the second, which would be amazing here for me, but it's not what happened.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, my first second round pick is the 35th overall pick, and I took John Michael Schmitz, the center from Minnesota. They need to fix their center position. That was a major issue in terms of pass blocking, and Schmitz has a very nice, tenacious. Yeah, I was going to say tenacity, but tenacious.
Tough accents and acting. I love it.
Sure. Yeah, pretty much. He's got a tenacious mindset. He's very physical out there. He's pretty much everything that I think the Bears are going to be looking for in the starting center. And so I rolled with him here with the 35th overall pick. I think there's a chance he's gone in the first as well, but there are a lot of guys that I think here in the second round, pretty much with the draft from pick 20 to pick 50, they're all viewed very similarly. So
yes.
In almost every iteration of these mock draft machines, John Michael Schmitz was available. So,
all right. Both of our pick 53 picks are up now. I went with DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle from Ohio State. Played a lot of right tackle. I think he could be a right tackle. I think he could be a left tackle. Obviously, with mine, I brought in McGarry, so that's my right tackle. I'm not moving him to left by any means. It's where he's played. It's where he's staying. I think DeJuan Jones can be good enough to compete for the left tackle position with Braxton Jones. Neither are great pass blockers. DeJuan Jones has just absolutely rare size of, I believe it's 6'8", 350, I want to say. I don't remember.
Wingspan
in his wingspan
history.
Yeah, he is an absolute freak. He is a perfect mauler, so the running of the system would be perfect for him. He can get out into space quick as well, but he does really struggle in the passing game. So that's going to be his growing area. So it's tight hips, heavy feet, redirecting isn't great. So the range in pass pro isn't good. So that's why, while he does have the size to be a back end of the first kind of guy and developmental guy, I think he falls to more of the back end of the second because he really hasn't shown, besides one practice session of Senior Bowl where people didn't try and do double moves on him or rush in and out or do anything besides go right into his paws. He didn't show anything on tape that shows me an NFL caliber starting edge rusher won't just trick him immediately.
Yeah, he's not a first round pick to me. But I understand why. I've seen him mocked there a lot recently, and I get it. The size thing, like the wingspan, is gonna push him up a lot of boards. Like they're gonna say, "Oh my God, what can we do with this kid?" That said, I do think his feet are slow. I also like out in space. I think he's good. I think he can get off balance even more than a lot of these like mauling guys. Simply, I think he's better in a gap scheme, but like he can move enough. That said, I think that you take a shot on him. I think that's a good move. Why don't you give your 61st pick to? Since I don't have that pick.
So I went with Gervin Dexter, the D tackle from Florida. You're going to see a lot of like Chancey in mock drafts here in the second. I think he's a top 40 player. I don't think he's anywhere near either of these two picks. I would say he's the third best D tackle for me, and it's not really close. Dexter here I have as a top 5 D tackle right now. He shows a lot of potential, but just not a lot of consistency. So that's where he's going to And that's technique, that's motor, that's everything. And you do get that from Florida players from time to time. So I do think he could develop in the system. They didn't get Jalen Carter or the top end D tackle in my mock. So this gives them an upside to pair with Dalvin Tomlinson and Armand Watts and just trying to figure it out. Justin Jones, figure it all out there. And I think he could be your developmental piece there. I do think he flashes really special talent, especially rushing and attacking in a 4-3 system. Great size, length, athleticism. He's kind of a freak athlete for the position as well. It's just he plays high, and his technique is lacking as of right now.
Yep. He's a former 5-star. Those guys tend to get pushed up draft boards too. He was like the 3rd overall player in the 2020 class or something insane like that. I know he was the first D tackle in this class by a wide margin, I think. I don't think there were more 5-stars behind him, if I'm remembering correctly. But good pick here. But I do think this is his range. I think that's right.
Yeah. I don't think he makes it out of 75. I think that would be his floor.
Yeah. I think there is a world in which he goes and blows up the combine and then pushes his way into first round talk too, for what it's worth. It's just he's a project, but
I could get into top like 40 maybe just because of a freak combine, which is possible from what I've seen on his tape. It's just the other parts of his tape puts him down here for me.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I'm gonna go with my 64 and then we'll kick back to you. So my 3rd round pick, what's that?
You didn't do your 53 yet.
Oh, I didn't do my 53. You're right. So my 53, I went with Derek Hall, the edge rusher out of Auburn. Just another traits guy with a lot of length that I think played really, really well in that Auburn scheme. Once again, attack the trenches. I think that I'm going to couple mine together. I'm cheating here. So a 364 for me, I went Zach Harrison. I doubled up at edge with back-to-back picks within 9 picks. And to me, so Derek Hall plays with a lot of speed to power. Zach Harrison plays with a lot of strength, and he plays with a lot of nuance. And I think we saw a lot of that on his senior tape. Derek Hall is more the traits flashy guy. Harrison's a good athlete too. I think that they counter each other almost perfectly. And now you're going and you're saying, these are my 2 young edge rushers that we're going to build on because we need to generate pressures. That's one thing the Bears just did not do. They could not get to the quarterback last year. I do think a double dip here and in free agency would be a smart move. And those 2 players, I couldn't pass them up. I kept doing it, and I was like, man, they're here almost every time. I think that's realistic. I think those are good ranges for them. I think Harrison could push his way into like top 50 talk, but yeah, I just doubled up the edge rusher here with these 2 picks.
Yeah, and Harrison is kind of like the embodiment of pressure over stats as well with his career at Ohio State. Nothing flashy if you're trying to look game by game, but every play he's pushing the line back, he's making plays, he's fighting to set the edge and push the rushes inside. He's doing all the dirty work, and I think that's a perfect compliment here. While he continues to as he's going to rotate, because you signed edges, so this edge room is completely different and evaporated and retooled and every possible thing you could say. And I do think he can learn a lot from these guys, and his bag will be a lot better when he's tasked to take over. But I do think he could be a high value player for them. And Derek Hall, like you said, just a raw athlete and speed, and I think he's got a long way to go as well, but both are great developmental pieces at the edge. I just took an edge early. You took the D tackle. I took the D tackle here. You took the edges. This is kind of how they're going to have to build it if they're going to attack both those positions as well as all their other needs.
Right. Exactly. All right. Why don't you go through the rest of your draft? You hit us with the 64 and then knock the rest out.
All right. Yeah. 64 is kind of the last of the big ones for me. So I'll go more in depth on that. Jack Campbell, a linebacker from Iowa, top end size, physicality. I think he's 6'4", 250. So he's kind of a prototypical build of the early 2000s.
Right.
Great processor, fantastic leader. He's everything you want from that Mike position, in my opinion. He's a very high-end attacking Mike linebacker as well. Although, in fairness, he is gaining ground as a modern day linebacker in range and pass coverage, especially in man coverage. I saw a lot of good plays. I'm still down the rabbit hole. I got a few more games to go to feel confident in his grade, but I saw some good things in zone coverage where he could attack. And so there's some good tools there. And he's smart and he can process, so I think he could figure it out. But I think he could be a really stalwart middle of your defense while you keep developing your D tackles. I think he can clean up everything for you, and you have your 3 more athletic linebackers around him, so he doesn't have to do as much. Even if he rotates in and he just plays first and second down for the first year or two, I think he could be an impact starter for you, which is a lot coming from a 3rd-round linebacker.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So next is Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver from Virginia. He had a pretty good Senior Bowl. One of the few wide receivers that really, quote unquote, stood out. I don't think any of them really stood out necessarily, but he's got the prototypical size, which a lot of this receiver room for the Bears does not have besides Chase Claypool. He's a vertical receiver, so now we're pretty much building out a full receiving core of deep shots and quick routes. Nothing in the middle, but that's where Cole Kmet can clean up. So he does have good ball skills and tracking skills, consistent release from what I've seen, especially at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, I want to get more in depth on him, but inconsistent hands, not a very good yak guy either. So once he catches it, it's pretty much it. I hate comps. I think we've both kind of gone over that. He's MVS. He's MVS. I mean, maybe a little bit bigger. I can't quite think of MVS's size right now, but he's basically MVS. But he's closer to MVS's level now, and he's coming in as a rookie. So that's why I think he could grow. And this gives you 2 shots to the receiving core as well as Paris Campbell, and what you're going to be extending and what you've already kind of paid the high prices for. I think it gives you a little bit more shot. And worst case, in a year or 2, you're thinking, let's get a dominant alpha to add to this room more than, okay, we need to flush out this room, because they basically had 3 receivers that, especially after Mooney went down, they had like 3 receivers of nothing. So to get a room of 5 or 6 that you could trust to play every week is a big thing.
Quickly, you got an extra first too, so they have the capital to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. next year, which I think
they do.
I think that probably is on their radar too, for what it's worth. So that's why I think we both attack the wide receiver room with like, these are guys, and they might not be superstar guys, but they do have the ability to go get one of those superstar guys. I think we didn't really talk about the possibility of them trading for a veteran wide receiver this year. I don't think they have the capital to do it currently. And even after the draft day trades, I don't think that they would go do that right now. I don't think they're in that stage yet.
In trading, the only one that really would make sense to me from building a receiver room standpoint would be Hopkins, but it's just not the right move for this team. Same with Brandon Cooks. It's just not the right move. So it's better for them to try and build out the room and focus on your 2 top guys and see if you can build out the rest of it. And we've usually been good at identifying guys in, 4th and 5th round that can really, shine. Obviously last year we both kind of beat the drum for Kyle Phillips, and I think he has showed some things at the beginning of the year, then the injuries kind of took away the rest of that season. I'm hoping Wicks and a couple other guys, Reed and a few others, will be getting into that wide receiver show in depth and kind of like list off a few names at the end. I think we're going to check off about 6, and then hopefully one of those hits. So Wicks is a good fit there. Olu Oluwatimi, I'm going to get used to it, I swear. The center from Michigan. In the back end of the 4th round, I think that's a fantastic pick for them. I didn't go out in free agency and get any center. I am keeping Lucas Patrick. But I think this is a developmental guy for you. 4 years starting in college, Virginia and Michigan. So much experience, football intelligence. He can be a leader at that position. And he's a really good pass blocker, which is the opposite of Lucas. But he's not a very good run blocker, in my opinion, right now. I think he's good with double teams and moving and, realigning the blocking scheme. But him personally, on anyone right in front of him, I'm not expecting him to maul them or dominate them or in any way. I don't think he has the best anchor as well. which is a big thing for centers in pass game, but it didn't seem to affect him that much in the SEC and the
Nope.
Big Ten.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was kind
I
of like,
was
nope.
trying. I was like
Michigan's in the Big Ten.
Virginia. Which one? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
ACC, I think, but
yeah, it is ACC. That's why I was like, that's not right. But I think he's a very competitive guy. I think he's going to continue to get better. I do think he could be a potential center for you for the future, but he is at worst going to be a very good backup because he's going to be able to come in and not make mistakes. And especially if you like your guards, which they do, even if they aren't the best, I think he can mask, Whitehair's struggles in passing game, and Whitehair and Jenkins can carry him in the run game. So I think it's a good future pick for them. Um, Moving on, Jalen Jones, corner, Texas A&M. This is just a shot in the dark at corner. Fifth round corners, you're hoping they can step on the field for you this year, be a high value special teams guy for you. But he's got the good size. He's very physical. He's an attacking run defender. Pretty decent ball skills, but besides the press, I don't like his man coverage yet. Again, I talked to, I think last episode where I just kind of shotgun blasted the corner room, kind of looked at a game of everyone trying to figure something out. So I got a lot of tape on him that I need to get through. But instincts, especially in zone, had a lot to grow. He was pretty much just sitting back. In transitions and leverages, I didn't see anything from the game I watched from him. Finally, safety Tyke Smith. Again, I'm just taking shots at the secondary here. They also don't have a lot of safety depth. So I think Tyke Smith going behind Brisker is a smart thing, mainly because he's kind of like Brisker where he's a good move piece as well, from what I've seen so far at least. So I will say a lot of his tape I watched other people and he was just on the tape. So man against tight ends, I saw him shut down people. Decent ball skills, but more just knocking it out. So you see, it's not necessarily a free range safety. It's more of an attacking safety in that regard. Because he's also not the best athlete and he does have some injury history. So, and he's not the biggest either. I think he's like 5'9", like 175, 180. But he plays bigger. It's just, he plays like he's 6'1", 205. It's just.
Yeah. No, I like the end of this draft here. Jalen Jones was getting hype as a potential first-round corner, which is just insane. I get it, like another 5-star, but he was a safety recruit, and he didn't pan out there, and so they moved him to corner. I actually think that if he doesn't work out, you can try him at safety, but I don't think his corner tape is good enough. He did grade out pretty well for PFF, and I think that they are fueling that the higher round talk that's kind of he's gonna fall if people expect him to go in the first round. I just don't see that as
hell no,
a thing that's gonna happen. But
I think he could go in the 4th, but again, this is the top end of the 5th round is where I took him. So it's just this is such a deep corner class and deep
he's not one of the top 8. I don't think.
Huh?
I don't think he's one of the top 8 corners.
No, I'm not even sure. I don't think he's top 10 necessarily. Yeah. He's in contention, but like
it's a good
off
class.
the top of my head, there was like 4 corners on the board there, and I was trying to pick which one would actually I thought could be there in the 5th more than the others. And I went with him.
Yeah.
But Tyke Smith was consistently there in the 5th, and I was like, basically a smaller Brisker makes sense.
Why not? All right. I'll give my day 3 here. Day 3, 4th and 5th round. I started out with Zach Evans, the running back from Ole Miss and formerly TCU, former 5-star. That is a kind of theme that we kind of went with here. But Zach Evans, to me, he's got some off-field questions. I think he's going to have to answer to why he was in a committee both places, despite clearly being a very talented running back. We talk about, Khalil Herbert's how he can bust off chunks. That's all Zach Evans does. He is a perfect fit for what the Bears want to do. So if he's here in the 4th round, I think that's a good, you put him, Herbert, and Penny in the same room for when Penny gets hurt or when Zach Evans just has to be in a committee because that's all he's ever done. But I love Zach Evans. He's still in my RB4 right now, I believe. Still very talented. That said, I think he is probably going on day 3 because of all that stuff that I just talked about.
Yep.
He's
If
had
there's any
issues.
if your separator for this running back class is concerns, you're down the board. There's no question because this
Yeah.
is such a plethora of good running backs that are going to be getting rid of all of these Matt Breidas and all these plotters that are still around that shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah.
They're all gone, and Zach Evans is taking that role, and I do think he would immediately put Ebner on the cut block. Like,
Yeah.
I think he'd be ideal, especially with what you built with Penny and Herbert. I think he would work really well there, and he has a chance to take over the backfield. It's just
I
not
think
the
there's
first year, but
I think he has the talent to do it. It's just, can he get his head right?
Yeah. I mean, you watch tape and don't look at anything else. You're like, oh shit.
I mean, ceiling wise, he's up there right behind Bijan. I think he has the second highest ceiling of any back in this class, and he's got to work on his hands, I think. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
he's
why I give it to Gibbs easily. It's because of that. But
yeah, yeah.
in between the tackles, Gibbs can't touch him.
And 5th round, my first 5th round pick, I went with Parker Washington. I don't know what receivers are going to be here, if I'm being honest. Like, I think I have a good idea, but like a month ago, I would have said Jaden Reed would be a perfect pick here. Then he went and showed out at the Senior Bowl, and I think that there's a chance that he sneaks into the 3rd round now, just with this wide receiver class. So he was there a couple times. I think he's a 4th round pick no matter what, if that's the case. Parker Washington, though, he flashed at times. There have been some Jahan Dotson comps because we're helmet scouting a bit. I think I understand it because they play in a similar way. On the other side of things, I don't think Parker Washington is quite the athlete that Dotson was, so I think he does fall pretty far in this class. And so here I went with a different type of slot receiver because I think that's what Parker Washington is, to kind of counteract Paris Campbell, but give you another option. And once again, I attacked the receivers in free agency, so I didn't really feel the need to go out and get one on day 2 either. Then I finished up with Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, the corner from TCU. He's going to be a divisive player. He is a tiny boy. But he's a very talented tiny boy that it was productive in that TCU defense. He was kind of the driving force behind their good pass defense. He's going to fall because of size. We saw it a couple years ago with the kid that also TCU. Where did Trayvon Merrick play?
TCU safety.
Who was the other guy that played with him? You know, the tiny boy? I can't think of his name.
I picture it. I can't.
Yeah, because they had 2 safeties. The one went to the Ravens undrafted because of size. I think on film he was good, but he was just too small. Hodges-Tomlinson is right there, but NFL bloodline, this kid's getting drafted for sure. For those that don't know, he is LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew. So
I'm very happy you put him in here. He was one of the 4 I was deciding between. I had him first, but I was like, I'll go with the big guy. Fuck it.
I get both motives, or like both ideas, and Hodges-Tomlinson to me does not fit what the Bears typically would look for. It's just I think at some point they have to say, good player, played good, let's get good players, and that's what I want.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I'm always going to be behind Parker Washington because this is a pro Penn State wide receiver show. It's been some of our best scouting critiques, so
Sure.
I'm very happy to stake my claims on Chris Godwin and Jahan Dotson. So,
sure. Do you want to read your depth chart now?
Yeah, very quickly. Obviously, Justin Fields, Montgomery and Herbert leading the backfield. Mooney, Claypool, Paris Campbell, Zay Flowers, Felix Jones, St. Brown, Dontavian Wicks. Kind of a scattershot wide receiver, but some good players there. Braxton Jones, DeJuan Jones, one of them starting left tackle. Cody Whitehair, Lucas Patrick, Devin Jenkins, Caleb McGarry starting line. Komet starting tight end. Miles Murphy starting edge, Justin Jones, Dalvin Tomlinson starting D tackles, Yannick Ngakoue starting edge, Nicholas Moreau, Jack Campbell, Joe Thomas, Jack Sanborn, all starting linebackers rotation wise. They do multiple sets, so kind of have to list all four of them. Jalen Johnson, Greedy Williams, Kyler Gordon as your starting corners. I also have Jalen Jones in here twice. They have a Jalen Jones on the roster.
Yeah, they do.
It's not in there twice. They have one on the roster, which is hilarious. Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker as your starting safeties. I think there's a lot of patchwork, but I think this is at least contending in the division team, especially with Rodgers gone.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
Or at least a scrappy fighting team like the Lions were this year.
Right. I think too. We didn't talk. A lot of what the Bears are going to do is very similar to what the Jaguars had to do last year, except they're a year ahead because their quarterback is year 2 in the system, and they've had their coaching staff kind of implementing, what they want to be. And so I think that between free agency and the load of draft picks that they should have after a trade, I think it's going to be pretty similar to what we saw last year with the Jags. Quickly, Fields, Rashad Penny, Zach Evans, Khalil Herbert, Party Boston game, shout out fullbacks. Mooney, Claypool, Paris Campbell, Alan Lazard, and Parker Washington rotating in. EQ St. Brown is your 5th wide receiver. Velus Jones stays on the roster as a punt returner. And even that, he muffed punts, but he started to build some things towards the end of the year as a kick returner. So I think that they do value him as a special teams guy at the very least. Starting line, Braxton Jones, Dalton Reisner, John Michael Schmitz, Tevin Jenkins, Mike McGlinchey. That is exponentially better. Both of our offensive lines are exponentially better than what they were last year, which is a key to this offseason, I think.
Yeah. The fronts is where the Bears are going to be spending their money.
Yep, for sure. Yep. Cole Kmet starting at tight end. So at defensive end, I don't really know who would start. I think it'd be probably Trevis Gibson. I think he showed a little bit, but he just wasn't productive. I think you'd end up starting your 2 rookies and Derek Hall and Zach Harrison, with Charles Omenihu also being there as the starter. You've got Zach Allen there as well. In my scenario, he probably finds a role.
He would have to start with the money you gave him, in my opinion.
That's fair. I also think Zach Allen has the ability to rotate into that 3-tech position, with Jalen Carter never really having to play a ton of snaps. So I think that it would just be one big rotation with all of those guys. They also have Dominique Robinson that they drafted last year. So it would be a much better rotation than what they implemented this year. With my David Long signing, I did move Jack Sanborn to Will, because I think that he can excel there. And I think the Will linebacker position is one that they need to trust in this defense. So I just bumped Sanborn over, moved David Long into middle linebacker, and then I did re-sign Joe Thomas to be the Sam. Corners, Jalen Johnson, James Bradbury, Kyler Gordon. I didn't sign anyone else, so their depth is still pretty rough here. And then Eddie Jackson, Jaquan Brisker once again, because that is a good safety duo. Eddie Jackson's career resurgence last year, hopefully after the injury, will continue. But yeah, I like both of our builds here. I like it.
Yeah, and then you have the TCU guy in there as well to be your corner.
Oh yeah, 4 or 5. Honestly, I think he'd compete with Kendall Vildor to be the corner.
I think he would. I think he would. Yeah. I just don't. My issue with him right now is I have to try and figure out where he's playing, just because he's not going to be able to take a lot of snaps at nickel, because Kyler excels there. So that's
honestly
size-wise, that's where he's going to fit. But I think he plays well outside. It's just
I think you could bump him out to safety and let him just be a coverage safety. That said, they don't really need that currently. That's what Eddie Jackson is, but maybe under his tutelage, that's where he gets some snaps early and then moves to corner. I don't know. I think he's a good player though. So
yeah, I think you full set the defensive line. I think that's, and then you spent money at the offensive line, where I kind of spent money on the offensive line and then drafted offensive line and then full spending money on the defensive line just
Yeah.
because I wasn't sure what would fall to me at 9. And I think that's a big thing for the Bears. They have to try and figure that out because there's a good chance, all three of the top edges and Jalen Carter are gone. And then you're sitting there like, well, do I go like Christian Gonzalez? Do I go Paris Johnson? Do I, there's a few ways you can go there. Do you, what at this point it seems like reach on Brian Bresee? Do you like there's a few options there, and it's just tough to fully flesh out what they would do. But I think in those situations, just from what the money they spent and who they have, like on my team, I think they would go Paris Johnson over Gonzalez, but it'd be close.
Yeah. No, I get it. I do think that they like what they're going to get out of Braxton Jones, and I think he showed enough as a rookie. It wasn't perfect, but it also couldn't have been with Cody Whitehair and at left guard all the time. He needs a better guard next to him.
And that's the thing. If that is the scenario, and you do go Jones or Johnson or Skoronski, like I think you could easily get the best 5 out there, and that probably still entails Braxton Jones.
Probably
in my build. Yeah. Obviously, I didn't spend a guard, so
right, for sure. All right, that'll do it for the Friday fix of the Bears on Saturday. We will be back
franchise
fix this week. We'll be back one of the days this week. We're gonna do our quarterback rankings. We're gonna do a little bit different of a structure this year, but we're still gonna hit a ton of guys. So thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you subscribe all the places. We'll also have some Marvel talk here in the next few weeks. I know I'm going to see Ant-Man next week. I don't know if Randy is.
It won't be next week. Just
okay.
It is. Oh, the weekend. I got no time. I got no time.
That's fair. But we'll talk about it eventually. Got to talk about our boy Kang because I'm a big Kang fan and I haven't even seen the movie yet. So
yeah, I think Sweet will try and go at worst probably that next Tuesday. So hopefully we can get through
Tuesday movie guys, huh?
It's cheaper.
Yep, it is the cheap day for sure. That sounds good.
We're broke, even though all three of us make the same amount of money. We're broke.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, that sounds good, and we'll probably do that in the next few weeks. But we will be back with quarterback rankings. We'll be back hopefully next Friday with a Friday fix. We'll work around the Debbie Royale schedule, which was the issue.
Greedy Debbie Royale.
Yeah, I know. Well. He had a mailbag scheduled. Shout out Kevin, doing great work over there. We share a StreamYard account.
He's just doing so much extra stuff that I'm so happy for him. It's just
he's doing great stuff. We love Kevin.
It's almost like we should probably communicate when we're trying to do stuff. It's crazy.
That was on me. That was all on me. But all right, guys. We're gonna get out of here. Until next time. Once again, if you guys have a quarterback you want us to hit on specifically, let us know. Obviously, the big ones. If you're like, hey, I want to know about Tyson Bagent, let us know so we can talk about him. Otherwise, we probably won't talk much about Tyson Bagent. So, all right, Randy, anything else?
Super Bowl picks, just for on the record.
Eagles.
I'm gonna go Eagles, and I know the line's like +1.5, but if I was betting, I would do Eagles. I think they got a +3.5. I would do that.
Yeah,
or -3.5, I guess.
Yeah, right. -3.5. I think the Eagles are gonna win by a touchdown. Honestly.
Coin toss. What do you got? Heads or tails? Let's get through all these.
Tails never fails.
I'm going heads just to be opposing. Sure. National anthem over. I think it's 203. I'm going over.
Over. It's a country singer, right? Yeah, over.
That's why. It's exactly what I said. Over. I swear to God. Okay. Gatorade color. I'm going through the fun ones.
Yellow.
I was going purple.
Okay, I like that.
I would like to see what both these teams had in their last Super Bowl wins, but
yeah,
because it seems like it's football players they're probably gonna have the same color. I'm just saying.
It's true. Okay, any more fun ones?
Longest fourth down conversion. I think the line's like 2.5 yards. I think you
Over.
smash that over. It's the Super
Yeah.
Bowl.
Fourth and 4 is gonna hit in the fourth quarter.
I'm trying to help Christian make money and possibly make money for me. We'll see how that one
Listen,
goes.
I'll give quickly my best parlay that I have this wild parlay. It's not gonna hit, but I had a lot of fun making it. I'll read it just really quickly. 11 picks, it's 11 legs. So Eagles -1.5, Chiefs over 20.5. So Chiefs to score 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts over 199.5 passing yards. Feels like a lock. That's going to be the one that doesn't hit now. Patrick Mahomes over 249.5 passing yards. Dallas Goedert over 35 receiving yards. Eagles over 26.5 points. Jalen Hurts over 34.5 rushing yards, which is the one I'm like pretty skeptical about. Quez Watkins 8 receiving yards. Over. Juju Smith-Schuster over 25 yards. Kenneth Gainwell over 15 yards rushing. And then the last one that I didn't need to add, but I got greedy, is a Dallas Goedert anytime touchdown.
So I think the Gainwell, you're gonna need like 5 carries from him, and that's where
I know.
I
There
don't
are
know
a
if he
few.
gets 5 carries.
That's my favorite one in terms of like I'm gonna have a lot of fun rooting for this. But the one that I think is actually gonna hit, Eagles money line, Hurts over 225, and Devontae Smith over 60. Pretty simple little parlay here.
Yeah, I think the Goddard line's pretty safe as well because he usually gets about 8 to 12 a catch. So I
Yeah.
think he's getting 3 catches. So
Yeah. I also have a little bet that Devontae Smith will be the game receiving yards leader. So
yeah, I saw a lot of people doing Pacheco as rushing leader, and I'm not.
I don't know about that.
I'm not against it, but I'm not the rushing leader of the game. I'm not betting because that's
no, not with these teams. It could be Jalen Hurts for God's sake.
And now Clyde's back, so each team has 3 running backs.
Yeah,
it's tough. Gambling has become a thing now, and I'm glad I'm glad I'm here because I'd be worse. But
I'm making money. I'm making money moves.
I got like $30 riding in Prize Picks this week, 25, 27.
I still can't play Prize
Picks.
Yeah, so
yeah,
stupid.
It's gonna be fun. Yeah. I know Sweet's gonna be doing the same thing, so it should be a fun Sunday. It's gonna be definitely gonna be relaxed, but unfortunately, I have registration on Monday, so I have to be at work by 7 a.m.
That sucks. That's real bad.
I have energy drinks. I'm prepared.
Sure. Yeah. I have cases of them. All right. Let's get out of here. All right. For Randy Hall, I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you guys next week. Later.